Thank you all. That was an amazing presentation. I think I know Sam's clapping. I've gotten a couple private messages saying that they love the diversity of the top-down kind of presentation you gave, going from a global level to a very, very local level.
Thank you. Lean in a bit, guys.
Oh, sorry.
So we do have some questions in the chat. And
I'll talk about the coffee and the chocolate, if I may, just address
go
that.
ahead.
That's a funny one. That was one we just added, and it was kind of like are we going to cross the Rubicon into non-Ontario foodstuffs? Because we had an opportunity through one of our co-vendors down at the Sororan Farmers Market in Toronto to start sourcing horizontally traded, fair traded, forest grown, like the best, most ethical coffee and chocolate from Mexico and the Dominican Republic. Mainly Mexico, like family farms. So it's like all the stuff we're trying to promote in this countryside here, in another nation as well. And like, you know, that paradigm of you vote with your dollar, you encourage things with your dollar. So we thought that it was a great opportunity for us to expand our reach and our members' reach with their money to support those practices in other countries. So that's addressing that one. That was a question. I would love to know of some locally grown chocolate and coffee. Yes.
So can we find that on your website?
Yeah, or you can check out Chocosol. It's in Toronto, and they're all bike powered. It's all amazing, basically. Chocosol Traders. They've got a great website about their practices, etc.
Awesome. I will definitely be hitting them up for some chocolate.
Yeah, I'll write that in the Chocosol.
Thank you. Another question, I'm not sure who wants to take this one on. It's a politically driven question, so feel free to pass if you would like. So the question was from Demetrios. He asks, climate change is not a political issue, it's a human issue. The impacts of global warming will be felt by everyone around the globe. So why has the topic been so heavily politicized, and why is it that no major party or candidate aside from the Green Party has made climate change their primary issue?
Ooh.
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, I think the answer possibly is that it's a very complex question. And has lots of different answers to it. I mean, I know that we really, we obviously really do need to get to grips with climate change in the very recent right now, basically. There's yesterday, and the problem with it goes back to some of the slides that we were showing earlier about the complex interrelationships between. And this isn't a great answer. It's not. You're not going to like it that much. But for politicians, it's a very, very difficult to come up with a solution, because it does mean that we are going to have to really, really look at the behaviours that we have as a society in terms of to limit global warming. Now, at the moment, you'd be very interested if you go and look up two of the movements that are proposing answers to climate change, and it basically is looking at the economy. And two of those movements, one of them is called degrowth, and the other one is called eco-modernism. And they're kind of two opposing sides to things. And degrowth is all about the idea that we have to ramp down our economic production. We have to really, really bring down our GDP. And that means some really fundamental shifts in how our economy works. Because one of the issues is that actually a lot of public services are driven by money coming in from growth. So if we ramp down growth, there is no, where do we get the money for public services from? So degrowth is often considered unpopular and unrealistic, but in other ways, it's looking at how we can think about our local economies, not just in a GDP way. How do we still live a good life without using lots of resources, and how do we support each other using social relationships and social capital rather than GDP. Now, the other one, just quickly, is eco-modernism. And eco-modernism, I'm not a fan of eco-modernism because it's all about using technology to solve climate change issues. And one of those things is, well, you know, how do we feed cities using small family farms? Eco-modernism talks about massive ramping up of intensive agriculture, but in much smaller places, because if we think that actually climate change is done by habitat destruction, then if we have really intensive farming on smaller areas, then we're going to help to solve that problem. And you can see how
restoring other, like taking farmland out of production, by taking, to restore it.
So these two are, you know, and I think the answer lies somewhere between those two, as usual. But it's just very difficult for you know, if you think about the politics around climate change at the moment, it's between things like you know, the Green New Deal. Well, you know, criticisms of the Green New Deal of what I've just said is really, you know, how do we pay for public services? You know, because a lot of Green New Deal people are also talking about ramping up public services at the same time. So it's a real political hot potato.
And I just think ecological economics is a kind of an interesting way to start. And it might be really interesting to see that if we stop hanging all of our economic forecasting and all of our economic modeling on GDP as the primary indicator of progress, because GDP does not talk about health services. It doesn't talk about the externalization of all of these waste products. So it's in my mind, and I'm not an economist, but it seems like it's geared to fail somehow. When you use an indicator of success, which is so narrow and so unrepresentative of the realities and the complexity of the world. So that's something that I think we can.
I'm sorry, Deb.
Sorry, I think that's something that we could explore more. Is ecological economics as a way to kind of wedge this issue.
And as one point, I mean, I think that you know, our 4-year election cycle in Canada is inherently not geared towards making long-term systemic changes, and that's just by virtue of the short time scale that the politicians are afforded, and not trying to give them a way out, but like they're trying to get reelected, so they're going to just listen to the loudest voices or listen to the corporate interests that are underwriting their campaigns. And this is just inherently irrational when you're trying to make long-term systemic changes. And that's the thing about systems, don't like change. You know, you have to really push hard at the beginning for anything to actually kind of trickle forward. And yeah, political will, that's a tough one. We're more likely to see our systems come up against shocks due to the symptoms of that. And then it'll be like, oh, we're trying to fix, you know, I just wish we could get ahead of the 8 ball sometimes.
So I think one of the things, if I just made that, one of the things, you know, that sounds all a bit depressing, doesn't it? But one of the really positive answers to this is you know, when we're thinking about systems and changing systems, we've got to look at new and novel structures, and maybe old style politics isn't the way forward for looking for leadership. We need to look for people in our local communities. We need to look for models that work, because one of the things about transitioning from one system to another system is you can't transition unless there are places to transition to. So we need to look out there to find the leaders in our communities and amongst people, and models that are already doing the localized farming, they're already doing the ecological citizenship, and start to move our systems locally towards them. So I think I'd be very positive about that. I would just say I wouldn't be negative.
I think one thing is we always talk about resilience in a sense that resilience is a characteristic that we want to promote. But I think what we have to start to do is we're just looking around is the resilience of some of our institutions. They say that the school system is having such a hard time in this because it is so conservative and so rigid and highly resilient that it is pushing against any kind of change. And so let's explore resilience not only in the way that you want to keep your ecosystems resilient, but we also create non-resilient institutions that we can have more of a way of changing. So,
shall we answer some more questions?
Yeah.
Yes, you got a lot of applause for the way you guys answered that. I think you brought in a lot of different avenues to
Well, there's
consider.
a lot to talk about on that one.
So on a lighter note, Sam would like to know what your favorite thing is to grow.
Oh, I always actually talk about this when I have new people in my fields. I'm like, if I could choose one, you got to narrow it down to the family, because there's just, I love the alliums, you know, onions, garlic, leeks. They're kind of the backstage players, but they're so wonderful.
And you need them to make anything.
And exactly, in the kitchen you need to make anything.
Eggplant is pretty nice.
Yes. But just for example, like garlic, I start the season and I end the season with garlic, in that it's usually the first thing that comes up, and it's usually the first green thing in our baskets, garlic greens, and then we plant it in November. So it is the bookend. And yes, thanks for the question, Sam.
It's the same? Is that the question?
I don't grow.
You grow? You grow things?
I grow chickens.
Deb raises our chicken.
Oh,
I didn't even
chicken lead.
I didn't even really talk about our chickens.
Well, I included a picture of our chickens.
That's true. We grow meat birds, a very small number, and I use them integrated into our crop rotation for fertility management, and also for pest management, and for protein.
And
so,
as ambassadors to livestock and free range, ethically raised, loved chickens. Next Wednesday is our chop chop day, and it's an extremely sad time on the farm. We remain committed to chickens, but it's not easy. So
no, it isn't.
It's not easy at all.
And
the chicken is amazing.
You know, it's hard sometimes to justify it, because it's such a drop in the bucket when it comes to industrially farmed animals. But for every chicken that we grow and someone buys, that's money that's not going towards industrial animal production, and to me that's a win. And I'm so grateful to our 200 birds a year, to each one of them, for the sacrifice that they make in kind of trying to turn the tide against that industrial animal agriculture, which is just crazy time.
They're great ambassadors.
I'd like to just add as my favorite vegetable, which we're well, I can't really call it a vegetable really, because we're getting into this. We're going to be starting to use some of the woodland on site as a way of growing fungi, mushrooms. So we've just planted some inoculated. Sorry, Sarah. She's such a fungal snob. We've just inoculated shiitake and oyster mushrooms in the woodland here, and we're going to start growing our own mushrooms, which I'm really excited about. So,
long process, though.
Long process.
Really interesting.
Anyway, any more?
Next question.
And this is the classic ask a simple question.
Yeah.
Before we jump into the rest of our questions, just in case people have to head out, I'm going to share my screen for a second. Can you guys see my call for action here?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So what the Community Climate Council would like to propose to everyone on this call, and anyone who couldn't attend as well, is to create a sustainable meal. Take a picture of it, post it on Instagram, and use the hashtag climate diet, and then also tag Peel Climate Council.
May I just, if anybody has questions on what consists of a sustainable meal, you can explore or ask me what's growing in season, and what can be locally produced and sourced, in terms, like, think about the oil and the spices, like really drill down.
And can I say that maybe a really neat companion to that is to actually tell a story about what the ingredients are. So that would be really interesting to see where all of this came from. And if you could post that and we could access it, that'd be amazing.
And then you can send it to the farm so that we can eat it.
I don't know about that with COVID going on, but maybe next year.
Nice.
So along with that, yeah, to get people started, we would suggest creating a meal using local ingredients, whether local is within your municipality, within Canada, within 100 miles of you, any of the above. Some people would choose to do a meatless meal. Some people make their own bread or a seasonal salad, or just some starting points. And I have already done mine. So there. Yes. So I made homemade garlic bread, just barbecued chicken from a local farm. Unfortunately, not Mount Wolfe Farm.
Okay.
We'll take it time.
A PEI potato and freshly picked green and yellow beans from the farmer's market. And this was done last year because are beans in season yet?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We harvested like 4 bushels today.
Oh, very nice. So this is one I did last year. I will be updating it with this year's one as well. And for the younger audience, or if there's any parents here who want to see some kids activities, we did a small magazine, which can be found on our website.
Lovely.
Can you guys see this screen? Yeah.
Love it.
So we just did build a mini greenhouse, do some seed balls, a hydroponic garden, seed paper, and then what I just presented for the local meal or the sustainable meal.
Wow. Nice work.
Is this all online, or do you have paper copies of this, or is it a online?
It's online only.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we will share the links to all this after the Zoom meeting. We should have everyone's email address, and we'll share it. It'll also be on our website and Instagram page. So going back to some questions, there is a question asking any tips for young farmers wanting to start their own farming operation, specifically for BIPOC youth who face unique challenges and barriers and may not have access to land?
Yeah, that's a really good question and very timely as we just start to really look through the lens of equity at all areas of our society. And there's a lot of wonderful organizations in the GTA specifically that are addressing this and have been for some years before it got blasted into everybody's living rooms in a great way. And one of those is Food Share TO, the African Food Basket. I'll write these down in the thing. Sundance Harvest, which is, she's a young Black farmer, urban farmer in Toronto, and is also heavily involved in activism and education and growing in the margins like Cheyenne. She's great. So check out Sundance Harvest. That's Soulfire Farm is down in the States, but Leah Penniman has written a book called Farming While Black. It's on my bookshelf and I'm gonna crack it open. I just finished one about fungus. So there's tons of great literature. I can't personally speak to how Black, Indigenous, people of color, youth could get into farming. I don't feel from a place of authenticity quite yet because I'm still learning and unlearning quite a lot about my whiteness in the space of farming. So a lot of this good work is coming out through the Ecological Farmers Association of Ontario as well. And the NFU. That's something that we're involved in, is this emergency food project for the St. Jamestown community in Toronto, and their response to the impending food shortages that are going to disproportionately affect people of color and below the poverty line post-COVID with supply chain disruption. So tips for getting into farming is find mentors or just get started. Basically, like, black faces and white spaces. Farming is a pretty white space, so the sooner that people get used to seeing diversity in the countryside, like, the better. We're doing some work through Arias for that?
No, it's just something that we've wanted to explore through Arias, which is creating opportunities for people to learn about this level of farming to learn about how to run a business, and then to actually assist them through this Fair Finance Fund to actually secure some land. So it's a very complex issue because land prices are so high. Access to capital is not possible. It's really hard to, plus just the knowledge. So that's something that I think we want to explore more, is kind of an
Incubator?
Thank you.
That's...
Incubator farms.
Yeah, and
it's the inoculation.
And I think if you go onto the ORIS website, we've had some work done by previous students around the Indigenous involvement in the farm as well, and how we can, and reconciliation, and how we can take that forward, and that's something
as a land-based business. Yeah, that's so it's a complex one, and it's not always comfortable place to explore, but it's an important place to explore because there was a great article by a climate activist who's Black to be like, well, I'm concerned about and worried about what's happening to the people of color in my community. I'm not focusing on these issues. So it's like we all need as much brain power as possible to solve these problems that are facing us as the human race. So that's, if for no other reason than that we should prioritize equity, then yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yes, we got some a response for that saying thanks for answering the question honestly. I know it's a difficult topic to talk about, especially if you're not in the community. So thank you for that answer. We have a question from Melanie saying, Canada ranked 20th in the 2020 Environmental Performance Index. Do you think there is potential for Canada to use the EPI as a target or guideline to become more sustainable? We focus so much on GDP, wondering if something like EPI could be a refresher to reset and refocus attention to sustainable growth.
So EPI is Ecological Performance Index, is that the acronym?
Yes.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, coming to terms with the fact that Canada is a primarily resource-driven economy, I think is going to be a big challenge for viewing our economies through the lens of ecological sustainability. So I don't know how.
And we're not, unfortunately, economists.
And we're not economists. That's a really good point. Jim, perhaps you take it up ecological economics course. You handle that one.
Well, I think yes is the short answer. Yes. I think any opportunity to have a look at different ways of focusing, how our economies work, that steers it away from just gross domestic product is going to be an interesting way of looking at things. I think that the problem is with GDP is that it's a very linear performance indicator. So it looks at an ongoing, linear focus on performance. Whereas, as we know, with ecological systems and complex systems in particular, they're not linear. They go up and they go down. They don't take, GDP doesn't take into account, as I've said before, it doesn't take into account the environment very much in terms of the balance sheet. And I think one of the things is, Sarah mentioned earlier this idea of ecosystem services, which is a buzzword amongst and natural capital, which is this idea that we get support services, we get services from nature, and it's criticized in a lot of ways because it doesn't take into account sort of unmonetary, or some people don't think it takes into account things that can't have an economic value put on them. But it's it can be a really useful tool in understanding how our economic activity is nested within the environment and we need to look at all the different stocks and shares, if you like. Think of fresh water and air and all these things as part of the economic balance sheet. And I think if anyone's familiar with the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment that was done back in 2000 and is continuing to be updated, it does look at those kind of stocks, the capital and the flows between elements of the capital as being something that we can put a number on and a price and an economic value on. So it's a useful framework, but we also need to think about those things that we can't put a price on, like, many people, back in England at the moment, we're building this massive, great HS2 high-speed rail link, which is going to, I think, increase 7 minutes or decrease journey times from London by about 7 minutes, but at the same time it's going to destroy masses of ancient woodland, and that ancient woodland is irreplaceable to some people. Whether you can regrow it or not is moot. It's irreplaceable to people.
Jim, 7 minutes. I mean,
7 minutes. Yeah.
So, one of the interesting things coming from a world of environmental activism is how we are so illiterate when it comes to economics, and yet economics is the world of politics. It is the world of exchange. It's the world of it, and yet we are it's not at odds, but it's just not something that ever came into our arguments, into our, it's not in our lexicon at all. And I think that becoming more literate in these areas will drive the kind of change. I think environmental activism has been unsuccessful because we focus so much on the environment is separate from all other systems, and that doesn't work. So
I would say, though, don't do yourself a disservice. Be kind. Hindsight is 20/20, but also, like, when things are under threat and it's imminent, you kind of have to scramble and do remedial work to save, don't pave kind of thing.
It's just an indicator of the lack of understanding of the complexity and ecosystems and systems perspective. I
just wanted to quickly address something that has recently been kind of floated into my world, is the concept of
it's okay,
of carbon credits, and that they're going to disproportionately they're just going to support the existing systems of like corporate interests and obfuscate and greenwash their operations, and they were not actually going to do the work of changing the status quo in the system that they purport to be doing the work of. So just listen for what's not being said about carbon credits and that stuff. It still relies on highly globalized economies and large corporations and exploitation and just like kind of passing the hat. And while we're doing all of that, we're losing valuable time. So I don't know a lot about it, but it's something that I'm kind of keen on learning more about, and I will write down that stuff in a moment.
We can there's a really helpful sort of model that helps us look at these things, which is called the Three Horizons framework, and it's all about transition from this moment to the next moment. And one activity that's in Horizon 1 is stuff that keeps us in the current paradigm of what we're doing. Activities in Horizon 2 are all about activities that appear like carbon pricing to take us into a new world, a new way of doing things, but actually they rely on the same model, the same paradigm, which is trading, which is economic capitalism.
Say the C word.
Sorry, I must wash my mouth out now. And Horizon 3 are those genuine moments, those genuine movements that take us beyond and into a new paradigm and a new way of doing things. And that's been a really helpful model that people are using now to really look at movements of transition from current paradigm to a different paradigm. So, and I think what Sarah's saying is really important. That's not to say that you should throw those Horizon 2 things out. And I think the idea of carbon trading has been really, really important and can be really important, but recognizing that it's still part of the same paradigm is really important, especially if you're thinking about the complexity of the system
and the scale of the challenge ahead of us.
Yeah.
It may be of such a scale that we can't rely on things like those A2 carbon credits to get us to where the world needs to get to. So.
Any other questions?
As we get towards 8:30, maybe we'll end off with 2 more questions.
Sure.
And we'll do our best to answer succinctly.
Not
possible.
Sam asked, have you noticed a change in the farming season in terms of weather over the years?
Yes. It's becoming increasingly less predictable in terms of when you get your first frost date, which can be an issue if it kills your tender crops, and then you still have like 2 months of good growing weather after it, but you just get this random super cold night at the beginning of September or the end of August. So that's necessitated expenditures for season extension equipment and materials and more plastic and more kind of season extension infrastructure like high tunnels, low tunnels, caterpillar tunnels, all sorts of tunnels.
Human labor to go up and cover.
Oh yeah, so and just like general angst. The human element's really important. Like there's fatigue that happens when I'm really worried about my plants that are getting heat stress because it's 40 degrees for 5 days. Like that's been wild. The heat waves have been crazy. Not having cold enough winters to kill off some pests. Snowpack, you know, like the spring melts and what kind of moisture is on the land to kind of take you through the spring planting season, and when you need to maintain like a high soil moisture to germinate your seeds, or flash flooding when you get when the soil is actually still frozen in the spring, but instead of snowing, it rains several inches, and then it can't go anywhere. It's just sheeting off. Yeah, it's wild. To answer your question.
Not to mention delicate English people find these hot summers really hard.
The bugs, they're so bad. We still don't have AC in our farmhouse, and I kind of want to know how long we can hold out before getting it, because it's been really hard this summer.
Yeah.
Anyway, next question.
And then our last question will be, what can the everyday Peel resident do to support local farmers?
Ooh.
Bring us cake.
I think there's a number of answers. One is tangible actions, seeking out farmers market, seeking out go to the Peel, the Grown and Peel guide. In the Hills has a really good farmers market. Yep. And I think that from a policy point of view, you know, we have this agricultural trends survey that is
do that.
Being circulated to support the official plan review. We're sending it to our members saying, you know, we need to have more policy support for this form of agriculture. We are in fact, through quirkiness of policy, we are disenfranchised through the policy framework. And in fact, the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan and the Greenbelt Plan disenfranchise local production. So there's things we can do with being educated and talking directly to our councillors. We might this might be something that Arias, we might want to do a bit of a tutorial on how do we actually advocate for local food, because there's so many different, like it's as complex as the industrial scale. We have to replicate it, but we have to replicate it in an environment that does not have a policy, doesn't have policy support. So great question, and I think
I think just recognizing that if you could think about and keep buying local food and vegetables in your mind outside of the prime market season. So, you know, having corn on the cob for 6 weeks and then being like, I'm eating local. Like, you think about it in January.
Garlic.
Think about it when you go to a restaurant. You know, what are the procurement policies of the institution you work in, if anyone goes into the office anymore. um, that kind of stuff, and just, you know, start following some local farms on social media and learn about the people who are running it, and get to know them there. I think just a really important note to end on is how much the story that we're going to tell about the future is going to shape that future that we move into. Like, that is so key. And one of the things, harkening back to what Deb was saying about where environmentalism has fallen down, is it's focused so much on the negative. We haven't explored and seeded the ideas of what the opportunities for a different world that we want to live in look like. So I don't know how that relates to your question, but even think about, like, what would it look like for me to live my life in a way that supports not just local food, but local makers, like local business people.
And understand that a local food system requires all of the same things that the long supply chain, which is we need access to processing, access to distribution. All of these same elements are here, but we just don't have them in place yet. So it's really educating yourself about how did this thing get to my table? How did it get here? And plot that out and internalize it and understand it.
And the history of how it's gotten to this place. If I just could do one quick little kind of case study. On Wednesday, when we drive our chickens to the abattoir, I have to take them an hour and a half to Harriston, where the processing facility is, because in the Mike Harris years, there was legislation brought forward to radically change the standards of small local processors to the point where it wasn't economically viable for these mid-scale facilities to replace every surface with stainless steel. All of these things that were done for public health, yes, but more relevant on a large scale processing facility where you're bringing in like 4,500 cows a day, you know, and like, where has that kind of led us down when we see in COVID times where we have 3 meat processors in Canada that handle 80% of the beef, something crazy like that. Like, the statistic kind of just blew my socks off. I'm like, how vulnerable is that system? So now in 2020, Sarah with her 200 chickens has to take these birds that she's raised with so much care and attention and low stress and drive them for an hour and a half to Mennonite country, where they've still retained this infrastructure. Whereas we had a processing facility of a mid-size on Highway 9, 10 minutes up the road, but it couldn't hack it as a business when we were only looking at things through the lens of large scale. And you just don't know what the implications of certain things are going to be until you're living in the impacts of them. So just looking back can give us a bit of insight on how things are going to look in the future if we continue down this road. Or what's the other road leading to? There's some great books and resources in terms of other farms that are doing similar things and are a little further along that road down in the States. One of them is Essex Farm, which is in upstate New York. They're able to do a full diet CSA because of different food restrictions, so they can do raw milk, etc., which is interesting. And what are some other good ones? We'll write a materials list and send it along. So
awesome. Yeah, I think I hope with COVID going on, I think a lot of people have looked internally and want to do more or buy from more local people.
Absolutely. And I just want to acknowledge that has totally happened to us in the last 5 months. And like, before this, I did not expect it to happen. Like, it's been a hard road in terms of trying to talk to people and convince them that our supply chains are really vulnerable. Maybe we should think about increasing our capacity to grow food locally. But with everything else that is in people's minds, it just wasn't a priority. And then it got pushed right to the forefront of people's minds. And all of a sudden, our CSA membership doubled overnight, and we didn't have to advertise, which has been amazing. Like, you say it, but we kind of came up on top of this one. And that's because people's priorities change overnight. So you never know when this is going to happen.
And that's happened across the board as well. It's not just us. It's, you know, you can pick up information on that CSAs are doing well, local farms are doing well across the board on COVID. So that's really positive, isn't it? And I think we all, you know, we're looking at COVID as being perhaps a game changer in terms of the way people think about society. And let's hope that it's a moment that we can we can build.
That is
Well, gratitude
sustainable.
to everyone who attended this talk today,
Yeah,
because
Thank
it
you.
shows that you're, you know, the hunger is there to learn about this stuff. And
I like how you said hunger.
that means a lot to folks who, you know, think about it too. So it's so wonderful to talk about this stuff in this space. And thanks everybody for your ears.
And thanks to Nicole for asking
Yeah.
us to do this talk. We appreciate that.
Thank you all for the presentation. I think I can speak for everyone saying we've learned a lot and gained a lot of insight into a bit more of your life and your struggles and successes.
Great. I'm gonna go build the chicken coops now.
Okay.
I actually have to go do that.
All right. Well, just before we sign off, I'd love to remind everyone to follow us on Instagram at Peel Climate Council. Also give Mount Wolfe Farms some love on Instagram and their social medias.
Me behind the keyboard, so say Sarah.
And then if you do choose to make a sustainable meal, make sure you hashtag climate diet. And at the end of the month, we will be doing a giveaway, hopefully in collaboration with Mount Wolfe Farms. I will check back in with the three of you. And we can work something out there.
Lovely.
And
This has been really fun.
yes, I agree. So the next event for Camp Climate will be Sunday, August 23rd, where we're talking to a local beekeeper. And the time is still a bit up there, but if you follow us on social media as well as our website, we'll have that updated. Also on our social media, we have our book club called People, Pages, Places, our climate cafe, and we're still looking for contributions to our magazine, Epoch. Right? I think that's it from me. Thank you all for attending, and we will send this recording out afterwards for people who couldn't attend or people who had to drop off early. But yeah, thank you everyone for making the time to come out, and thank you again to our presenters for taking the time to collaborate with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Right.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone. I'm trying to
everyone.
write stuff in the sidebar there. Good night.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Better be hurry because it's going to go. Press the send.
All right. Nice, Nicole. Thanks so much. Hope we
Thank
didn't
you
ramble
all.
too badly there.
No, I got some private messages from people and everyone seemed to love the information you were sharing.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think it went great. We don't have to burn my computer, which is a good thing.
do forward us on any other questions that you think that you'd like answered or anything like that.
Yes, and I will share this presentation with you guys. So if you want to share it, feel free to.
Yeah, is it going to go on a website or anything, or is it just you're going to share it internally?
I believe it'll go onto our Facebook and our website if we can get it up there. Yeah.
Awesome.
And also, yes, I'll be in touch with you guys. Hopefully we can do, I don't know if you guys do gift cards for your online store. Do you?
No, but I could potentially set that up with a store credit. So if the winner of a raffle like signs up to view my catalog, I can assign store credit to their account.
Okay, awesome. So at the end of the month, we're hoping to have a winner, and I'll touch base with you later on to maybe get that set up.
Cool.
Maybe like a $25 gift card or something, or credit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you all again.
Thanks, Nicole.
Fantastic.
All right.
Thanks,
We'll
Nicole.
talk later.
Yeah,
Okay.
catch you again soon. Bye now.
Okay, bye.